How's it going, everyone? This is the George here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Scream 3. That's right, we're continuing this horror, Halloween, spooky themed series of reviews for October, and what what better way to continue it than continuing to review the Scream movies? I reviewed Scream 1 a couple Halloweens ago, Scream 2 around last Halloween. I reviewed Scream 6 when that movie came out. So the next movie to review is Scream 3. And by the way, you can check those out on my channel. I'll put the links down below if you want to hear my thoughts on those movies. But with Scream 3, once again, Wes Craven directs it. This time, it's not Kevin Williamson that's writing the script. It's Ethan Kruger that writes the story. And here, Sidney Prescott is in self-exile. She lives in the woods, mountains type area. She is now working on a women's crisis hotline, helping women who are abused through phone. And while this is happening, new Ghostface killings are happening, this time in Hollywood on the set of Stab 3. This is the movie within a movie, and these Stab movies are based off the events that were triggered from the first Scream movie based on the Woodsboro killings, and they have made a franchise about them. So the cast is under attack. Now, fair warning with this. First of all, I forget to say this every time I review an old movie. There's going to be some spoilers, but also there are going to be some real life events that are mentioned in this review that are connected to this movie. Just giving you a fair warning. But with Scream 3, this movie came out a few years after Scream 2, and Kevin Williamson didn't return to write due to other projects that he was lined up for. And I honestly had no idea until recently that Ethan Kruger wrote the story for this one. He's also one of the writers for some of the Transformers sequels that have come out, as well as the live action remake of Dumbo. He doesn't exactly have the best track record. I think the only screenplay that he did well in or a movie that had a great positive response that he wrote the screenplay for was Top Gun Maverick. Outside of that, he hasn't exactly had the best Stiller record. So, and it's very telling in this movie because the story is the weakest of the Scream movies. So I think it's a terrible story? No. I don't think Scream 3 is a bad, terrible movie. I do think it's a mixed bag of a sequel, though, in comparison to the other Scream movies. I love the Scream franchise. Scream 1 is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think Scream 2 is a very good sequel to that movie. And I like Screams 4, Scream 2022, also known as Scream 5, and Scream 6. Scream 3 is the one that I have the weirdest feelings for because, on one hand, I do feel like it's the weakest, and I feel like it's a waste of potential. I mean, you're in a different setting, you're in Hollywood, there's a lot more potential, but it also feels like it's wasted potential. This is a movie that feels like does feel more held back, and that's in large response to the debate that was going on as the screenplay for this movie was being written, which was, does violence in media play a role in violence in real life? Which is actually a very interesting conversation that did happen in the first Scream movie when Billy Loomis reveals himself as the killer, and he's going on about how the movies make killers more creative and all that stuff. But in 1999, this is one of those real life events that we mentioned. We know what happened. The Columbine shooting happened, where students got shot by two of their fellow students, and another teacher also got killed. So there was this debate of whether or not violence in media was playing a role in the youth getting more violent. And there was a debate about whether or not this movie was going to be made, or was it too soon for this movie to come out. If you can tell in this movie, the killings in this movie are tame in comparison to Scream 1 and 2 and the next three Scream movies that come out after this movie. Like, there's less blood in this movie and it's less graphic. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's definitely noticeable in this movie. They definitely go for the more enjoyment factor in this movie, which is kind of weird because I always felt the Scream movies were enjoyable overall in comparison to other horror movies. They were definitely more comedic compared to Halloween, the original, or Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven just knows how to make entertaining movies. Although actually Nightmare on Elm Street was entertaining, but and was directed by Wes Craven. But if I was going to compare Nightmare on Elm Street to Scream, I would say Scream is the more entertaining and more rewatchable one for me, at least. And I wouldn't mind that they went for the more comedic factor in this movie if, number one, Scary Movie, which was a parody of scary movies, including Scream, had come out the same year and is more parody than the Scream movies. And two, if the humor delivered. Not to say that the humor wasn't funny at times, but at other times it just didn't land well. There's this one character, she's this actress that's playing Gail Weathers in the Stab movies, and she's just very annoying. Of the actress characters that are joining the group in solving this mystery, she's the one that gets the most screen time, and I find her to be the most annoying of the bunch. But yeah, it's very noticeable that the violence in this movie is toned down. Now, before we get into the next thing, I will say, as far as characters go, Neve Campbell's still excellent. Sidney Prescott. I love how they handle her character. How, on one hand, she feels like she needs to put herself in self-exile to protect herself, but on the other hand, she's still trying to find ways to help people from afar, and then later comes to Hollywood to help confront this new Ghostface killer. Although she's not in this movie as much as she's in the first two. David Arquette as Dewey, Courtney Cox as Gail Weathers. I still enjoy them, although I would say the versions of these characters, not my favorite versions. They still portray the characters well, but at the beginning they kind of weren't as likable as they usually were, but over the course of the movie, they got more likable once again. I would say the standout as far as the new cast was Patrick Dempsey. He plays this detective that's investigating the murders. There's hints that maybe him and Sydney could become a thing, which, later on in the franchise, it's revealed they did become a thing and they did get married. But yeah, I like Patrick Dempsey a lot in this movie. It's kind of disappointing that he's not in this movie as much as he probably should have been. Instead, they focus much more on the annoying actor characters that are portraying the actual victims, the actual real life people that experience these Woodsboro killings. Also, Jay and Silent Bob also make an appearance in this movie. Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith appear as Jay and Silent Bob, which is an interesting little Easter egg reference and tease because the following year, Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back also came out, which is also a Miramax movie. And also in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, Wes Craven also appears in that movie, directing what looks like a Scream movie, or maybe it's a Stab movie starring Shannon Daugherty. And by the way, rest in peace to her. So I don't know if Jay and Silent Bob were in that movie to have that Miramax connection, or maybe that was a way to get Wes Craven into Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. It actually makes me want to see a Scream Views Universe crossover, or a Jay and Silent Bob themed horror movie. Kevin Smith, I doubt you're watching this, but do make that happen. Try to make that happen. That would be very interesting for a horror movie. But also, that's another movie that also takes place in Hollywood, Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back. Makes me wonder, not only are these universes the same, did Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back happen before the events of Scream 3? Now let's get more into some of the more mixed elements of this movie. So once again, this is a meta movie, touches upon, horror movie sequels and, of course, now trilogies. But also, it's very meta about Hollywood in the industry. There's a character in this movie, there's a high-ranking producer character that is basically a fictional version of Harvey Weinstein in this movie. And we all know about Harvey Weinstein, seeing what came out in 2017 from the New York Times about what he had done to several women. And Me Too sparked after that. This movie, I saw this movie after the Harvey Weinstein stuff came out. And even right then and there, when I watched this movie for the first time, I was like, this feels like Harvey Weinstein. because the way this guy's talking, talks about some of the parties that he's had saying how I know criminal producers and all of that. It's basically the stereotypical sleazebag producer that abuses his power and abuses people. And Harvey Weinstein was an executive producer of these movies. And it does beg the question: did Wes Craven and Ethan Kruger know what Harvey Weinstein was up to? I know there were rumors that Wes Craven and Harvey Weinstein used to clash on these movies, so maybe this was Wes Craven's way of taking jabs at Harvey Weinstein. Did Harvey Weinstein know ahead of time they were going to do this? I don't know. I don't want to get into it. This is a Scream 3 review, but it does create a lot of questions when you watch this movie after learning about what Weinstein really did. But it's a decision that I think people will be mixed on, especially post Me Too, because on one hand, it does create an interesting message and conversation about the abuse of power by producers. But then when you think about what Weinstein really did, people are going to wonder, wait, they knew all this time? But overall, that's a plot line that's in this movie. And the suspect in this movie, or the culprit of this movie, is this director named Roman, who is revealed to be Sidney Prescott's half brother. Now, this is where we get into other stuff that I'm not crazy about with the movie, and that is the plot line tying into Sidney Prescott's mom. Apparently, and I don't know why they got to tie everything back into Sidney Prescott's mom. It's just you can tell a new Ghostface story without doing that. The other Scream movies did that later on very well. And the fact that Roman, Sidney Prescott's half brother, also played a role in influencing Billy Loomis behind the scenes, it takes away from the powerful motivation that Billy Loomis had in the first movie. And it doesn't ruin the first Scream movie for me. I still love that movie. I still think Billy Loomis is the best Ghostface killer, him and Stu. But it felt very unnecessary. It's just, why not just do your own set of Ghostface killings, taking your anger, your resentment towards Sidney Prescott's mom out on Sidney and also the industry that ruined this woman and led to all this to begin with. It just didn't make sense to me why they had to have that whole, oh, hey, I told Billy Loomis, I got in contact with Billy Loomis kind of thing. There's a lot of conveniences in this movie that are unnecessary. Randy appears in a recording, and Jamie Kennedy is still excellent as Randy. He's my favorite character in the Scream movies. But learning that apparently he did one of the horror movie sins in between the events of Scream and Scream 2. That's why he got killed in Scream 2. And now he's got this recording just in case something happens to prepare for the third movie. Just feels very convenient. And apparently his sister was the one that brought in. Why not just have his sister be a new character in the movie and help contribute to the adventure and maybe offer her spin on horror movie cliches? It probably would have been a lot better than focusing on these actor characters. That's another thing. The characters we wanted to see more of, like Patrick Dempsey's character, I would have, as I said before, I'd rather would have seen him more. And Sidney Prescott's not in it a lot at the beginning. And I know people will say, well, Scream 5, it was the same way. But Scream 5 also had interesting new characters that we've grown to enjoy. And these characters would later help carry Scream 6. And also, the Scream 5 versions of Dewey and Gale were a lot more likable and had interesting plots for that movie in comparison to Scream 3. This movie's proof that not just, you got to be careful with how you manage your third movie, because I understand you want to be bigger and better, but sometimes bigger doesn't mean better. But also, writing is key. And when Kevin Williamson does not write your third Scream movie and someone else does, and this person also, Ethan Kruger, apparently disregarded some of the notes that Kevin Williamson left him, there's going to be some problems. Now, do I think this movie is all bad? No, I like the opening kill with Cotton Weir. I think that's one of the best opening kills in my opinion. As I said, Neve Campbell is still excellent. Sidney Prescott. I enjoy the Hollywood setting, especially because the next two Scream movies would later take place in Woodsboro, and we wouldn't have it take place in another different setting until Scream 6. So I like that there's a different setting and that they're touching upon the stab movies, because outside of the stab movies being mentioned in Scream 2, in the opening sequence of Scream 2 where this couple is killed during a screening of Stab, you don't really know much about it. So I like that they're touching upon the Stab movies in here. Besides the Jay and Silent Bob cameo, you got a Carrie Fisher cameo that was really entertaining as well. I like the third act, the final confrontation with Ronan as well. Although the relying heavily on the bulletproof vest, another weird convenience. I also like that they added a new twist with the Ghostface mystery in regards to the new voice changer that also has the voices of Sydney, Dewey, Gale, and other characters. It adds to the mystery. It's like, okay, Ghostface always has this voice changer. Why not have him have other voices? It's another convenience, but I think it's a good convenience. It adds more to the mystery and throws the characters off guard. So I like that they added that twist in. And yeah, with Scream 3, this is a movie that I don't dislike, but it's definitely the weakest of the Scream movies. It's a movie that came out at an interesting time in regards to the conversation of violence in media. It's also an interesting movie to examine post Me Too, post 2017 when the Weinstein stuff came out. And obviously, the way this movie ended and was set up, they thought this was going to be the last Scream movie. They've done 3 more. But even still, I find Scream 3, even though it's the weakest of the Scream movies, I still prefer it over most of the other horror movie sequels we've gotten from other franchises. I would still watch Scream 3 over most of the Halloween sequels, over most, if not probably all the Friday the 13th sequels, over most of the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. It's still a million times better than a lot of horror movie sequels, just overall. And it just tells you how consistently good the Scream franchise has been and how they improved from this movie in regards to Scream 4, Scream 2022, and Scream 6. I still don't know why the 2022 movie is not called Scream 5, but whatever. But overall, with Scream 3, I'm going to give this movie a C+. This is a movie that had potential, that had some interesting plot points, but too many conveniences, unnecessary characters, focusing too much on characters that we don't care about. It's like when these characters get killed off, it should mean something, but it really didn't this time around. Oh yeah, one thing I'll add about the third act. It felt like the third act went more quicker this time around than Scream 2. Maybe because Scream 2 was a longer movie, but I felt like it was quicker paced this time around, and it worked out a little bit better. But yeah, overall, those are my thoughts on Scream 3. And what are your thoughts on Scream 3? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What's your least favorite of the Scream movies? Let me know in the comments down below, and I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe already if you haven't. Please share this with someone that loves the Scream movies, and I hope to see you guys real soon. Take care, everyone.